Operation Fall Gelb, the decisive blow that brought about the collapse of the West. Part 1. The quiet north, the rising storm in the west. May 1940. In northern Europe, snow still clung to the rugged mountain slopes of Norway. German forces had just completed the capture of Oslo, Bergen, and Narvik, a bold combined naval and airborne operation that Hitler regarded as a favorable beginning to the spring campaign. Yet deep down, Hitler understood clearly, Norway was not where Europe's fate would be decided. The ultimate glory of the Third Reich did not lie in the frozen north, but in the west, in France. Since Poland's collapse in September 1939, Europe had entered a strange state. War had been declared, yet no major fighting occurred. To the east, the Soviet Union stood silent like a massive shadow. To the west, British and French forces entrenched themselves behind formidable defensive lines. 8 months passed. No bombardments, no general offensives, no major movements. This period became known as the phony war, but to Hitler it was a nightmare. Part 2, the deadly stagnation. In the underground command room in Berlin, Hitler frequently sat before a map of Europe spread across a large table. On it were rivers, forests, borders, and above all, France. He traced the enemy's defensive lines repeatedly with a pencil, often lingering over the Maginot Line, the massive concrete wall the French believed to be impregnable. Hitler said to Chief of the General Staff Wilhelm Keitel, open quote, "If we do not act, time will kill us," close quote. This was no exaggeration. Germany was being silently strangled. The British Navy blockaded the seas. Oil, iron ore, and war materials were being cut off piece by piece. The German economy survived only through the speed of war. A prolonged conflict meant collapse. Meanwhile, the French concentrated more than 80 divisions along Maginot Line, convinced that if they simply held their ground, Germany would exhaust itself and fall. Hitler understood clearly. Germany could not fight a war of attrition. He needed a major victory, a decisive blow, a fatal strike into the heart of the West, and that target could only be France. France, the key to Europe. To Hitler, France was more than just a country. France was the military pillar of the continental Allied powers, the shield protecting Britain, the strategic and psychological center of Western Europe. If France fell, Britain would be isolated, the European order would collapse, Germany would become the dominant power on the continent. In a brief address to his generals, Hitler declared, open quote, "If France collapses, all of Europe will open up. If we fail, Germany will be strangled to death." Close quote. War, for Hitler, was not merely about seizing territory. It was a contest of speed, surprise, and will. And while the echo of artillery still lingered in Norway, Hitler fixed his entire gaze on the west, on the Ardennes Forests, quiet in a dangerously deceptive way. Part 4, Directive Number 6 and the Old Plan. On October 9, 1939, Hitler issued Directive Number 6. In it, he ordered the defeat of the Western European states, the conquest of the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg in the shortest possible time, the opening of the way for a long-term campaign against Britain. Chief of the General Staff, Franz Halder, was tasked with drawing up the plan, but Halder was a conservative officer. He proposed a direct attack through the Netherlands and Belgium, an advance toward the French border from the north, a repetition of the route taken in 1914. It was a familiar plan, safe and extremely dangerous, because the Allies were prepared to counter it. The Maginot Line still blocked the south sides. The war risked turning into a war of attrition like World War I. Hitler exploded, open quote, "If we merely copy history, we will die in that very past." Close quote. He wanted something bolder, faster, utterly unexpected, but at that moment, no one had the answer. Herr Part 5, Manstein and the Despised Idea. Hitler was not the only one dissatisfied with the old plan. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, commander of Army Group A, also recognized its flaws. He understood that modern warfare required mobility, encirclement, and destruction, not headlong assaults against fortified lines. Together with his chief of staff, Erich von Manstein, Rundstedt began to consider an alternative. Manstein proposed that the main attack should not go through the Belgian plains, Sedan, but through the Ardennes Forest, where the Allies believed tanks could not operate, crossing the Meuse River at Sedan, then thrusting deep toward the English Channel, cutting off all Anglo-French forces in the north. It was an idea so daring that it was dismissed as madness. Even many German generals objected. The terrain was too dense. The roads were poor. If blocked, the entire force would be trapped. Manstein consulted Heinz Guderian, Germany's foremost armored warfare expert. Guderian agreed, and went even further. He proposed concentrating the strongest armored forces at the breakthrough point, not waiting for infantry, advancing independently at lightning speed, denying the enemy any time to react. This was Blitzkrieg at the strategic level. Part fis, intrigue within the general staff. Manstein's idea was too dangerous for the conservative leadership. Franz Halder sought to remove him. Manstein was transferred out of the general staff and sent to command a distant army corps. Yet this injustice became the very reason Manstein's plan reached Hitler. On February 17, 1940, in Berlin, Hitler summoned Manstein. On this rare occasion, Hitler did not interrupt. He listened, and the more he listened, the more convinced he became. In the end, Hitler agreed. The next day, he ordered the entire plan revised along Manstein's lines. The operation was named Fall Gelb, the Yellow Plan. Part 7, the perfect trap. Fall Gelb was constructed as an exquisitely refined strategic trap. First thrust, Army Group B. Attack the Netherlands and Belgium. Airborne troops seize bridges and airfields. Create the impression that this is the main effort. The Allies fell for the deception. They sent their best forces into Belgium to stop Germany at a distance. Second thrust, Army Group A. The main blow, through the Ardennes. Across the Meuse at Sedan, deep thrust toward the sea. Within days, German tanks advanced hundreds of kilometers. The battlefield was split in two. More than 1 million Allied troops were encircled. Third thrust, Army Group C, PIN. French forces along the Maginot Line. Block reinforcements. Complete the encirclement. Part 8, the collapse of the West. On May 10, 1940, the operation began. Within weeks, the Netherlands surrendered, Belgium collapsed, British and French forces were driven back to Dunkirk. 338,000 soldiers were rescued in chaos, leaving behind all heavy equipment. France fell after only 6 weeks. This victory eliminated the Western Front, raised Hitler to the height of his power, completely altered the course of World War II. Conclusion: the lessons of history. Fall Gelb was not merely a military victory. It was the triumph of creative thinking over rigid tradition, the triumph of speed over static defense, and a bitter lesson in strategic complacency. Europe entered a dark era, beginning in a forest no one expected. If you want, I can. Continue with Operation Fall Rot, the capture of Paris. Convert the entire work into a YouTube video script, documentary narration. Break it into a series of in-depth history lectures. Just tell me which direction you want.